The old veteran stood at the gate with his hands folded behind his back, his posture straight as if his bones still remembered the discipline of his youth. But the guards didn't see the years. They saw the wrinkles, the tired eyes, the faded uniform. They saw a man who belonged in a museum, not at the entrance of an active base. "Move along," one of them said, voice sharp and impatient. The veteran's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. He had argued enough in his life. Had fought battles where arguing was a luxury he couldn't afford. Now at the gate, he simply waited. He waited for someone to recognize him, waited for the respect he once received to return, even if just for a moment. But it didn't. The guard's stare was cold, the kind of cold that comes from never having to face what your words do to someone else. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. The veteran's name was Elias Ward. He had served for decades, fought in wars that were no longer talked about, and had saved lives that were never recorded. His medals were tucked away in a box at home, but his memories lived in his hands that had once held rifles, now trembling slightly as he adjusted the cap on his head. He looked at the base behind the gate, the place he had once protected with everything he had. The flag fluttered above the buildings, bright and proud. The same flag he had once saluted without hesitation. It's the same flag that now seemed to mock him. He took a slow breath. The air smelled of fuel and dust, sharp and metallic. The sound of engines and distant voices filled the space like a constant reminder that life continued even when people were forgotten. The guard leaned forward. "Sir," I said, "move along." Elias didn't move. He simply stared at the guard, and in his eyes was a storm anger, sadness, and something deeper, a pain that had been buried for years. He wasn't asking for permission. He was asking for recognition. But recognition didn't come. Instead, the guard reached for his radio, his fingers tense. "We have a trespasser, an old veteran at the gate." Elias felt his heart sink. He could hear the implied insult in the word trespasser. It was as if his service had expired the moment he stopped fighting. He could have left, could have walked away, head down like so many veterans did when the world refused to see them. But he didn't, because the base wasn't just a place. It was a promise he had made to himself, a promise that he would always return to protect it, even if the world had moved on. A few minutes passed, and the guard's laughter faded into silence. A hush spread through the area, the kind of silence that arrives when people realize they are about to witness something they didn't expect. Then the sound came first, faint, then clear. Boots. A steady, synchronized march. It's a kind of march that doesn't just walk but announces itself. The honor guard arrived. They appeared like a tide, moving in unison, rifles held high, faces set with the seriousness of a ritual. Their uniforms were immaculate, their movements precise. They stopped in front of the gate, and the leader stepped forward. The guard who had been mocking Elias stared, confusion flickering across his face. The honor guard's leader lifted his chin and spoke, voice strong and unwavering. "Sir, we salute." Elias felt his breath catch. The old man's eyes shone, and for a moment he looked like the young soldier he once was, full of pride, full of purpose. He watched as the honor guard raised their rifles and saluted him. Not the gate, not the base, but him. The guards at the gate froze. Their faces went pale. Some looked away, ashamed. Others stared, unable to process what was happening. Elias's hands trembled. He had never expected this. The honor guard's leader stepped closer, lowering his rifle slowly. "Welcome home, Sergeant Ward," he said. The words hit Elias like a wave. He had been called sir many times in his life, but never with such sincerity, never with such reverence. The guard who had tried to push him away felt the weight of his mistake. He swallowed hard, his eyes avoiding the veteran's gaze. Elias looked at him, not with anger, but with a quiet sorrow. He realized then that the guard wasn't cruel by nature. He was simply a product of a world that forgot how to honor what mattered. Elias turned to the honor guard leader. "Thank you," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. The leader nodded. "You earned it." The crowd that had gathered behind the gate soldiers, staff, civilians, watched in stunned silence. Then, one by one, their expressions softened. A few heads bowed. A few people wiped their eyes. The air shifted from cold to warm, as if the base itself was remembering its own heart. Elias stepped forward, not as a forgotten man, but as a living proof of sacrifice. And in that moment, he understood the true meaning of respect. Because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. The wind carried the sound of the flag fluttering above the gate, and Elias felt the weight of his years settle into something like peace. He stood there, surrounded by those who had once dismissed him, and he realized the world could still change. He just needed one moment to remind it.